Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and this is Create Your Own Cozy. It is time for the 2024 summer release from IOD, and I'm so excited to share some of my favorites with you. Don't forget to check the playlist down in the description below with other creatives that got to play with these gorgeous items ahead of time so that we can show you some ideas of how you can create. All of the IOD products are on my website at createyourowncozy.com. And if you want to see what I came up with this week, stick around. First things first, let's go through the Rose Botanical transfer from this new summer line. Now, I am going to tell you, there are 2 full-size flowers, 5 half-page flowers, 6 quarter-page flowers, and then 17 little flowers. Guys, that is a lot of gorgeous floralness. That's 30 different floral images that can be added to furniture. It can be framed and be art on its own. It can be added to mixed media for a layered look. I cannot wait to see all the things you guys create with these. I think this is going to be a favorite. The next one is an 8x10 Floral Fairy Tales transfer book. These florals are just my cup of tea when it comes to the muted colors and this vintage vibe that they are giving off. So many lovely fairy book creations can be created with these. This next one is gilded. It's called Etiquettes. It is a new product for IOD. It is very much like transfers, but they're gold, guys. This reminds me of the crockery stamps and the traditional pots transfer, but the difference is they come off golden and they make everything look special and rich. So many options for this one. Next is a new staple to go along with Kindest Regards and Le Courier. It is called the ephemeral type. It is wonderful for mixed media, those smaller projects, or to use in the background of projects. And the great part about this one is it comes apart in sections so you can use it in those smaller tight-fitting spaces. This one, I'm gonna say they're all like my favorite, but guys, bows. Look how beautiful the detail of this is. There is a larger bow and a medium-sized bow. You can change the tails. Oh, so many options. And now we have the Paint Inlay Delft Traditions. This comes in a blue color too, but I got this, it's kind of like an off black. Look at these fun patterns. You know I'm gonna have so much fun with this. It's a smaller scale. If you guys are jumping on the inlay train, I would grab one of these, either the brown or the blue one, and just have so much fun. Look at these. So many fun projects are available with this paint inlay. Let's go ahead and get started. What do you think? Every time I work on projects for you guys, there is one problem project child, and this is it. So I'm just going to start with it. My mother-in-law gave me this little window pane. I told her I was going to paint over it, and she was okay with it. The wood needed repair, and I just wasn't a fan of the color of the dresses. And I thought this would be a perfect base to showcase these new floral transfers. So the first thing I did was picked the 4 that I wanted to use, kind of set them out. Then I made my own color using Cowgirl Coral and Petticoat Pink from DIY Paint. I just wanted a lighter version of this coral to go with the transfers that I chose. Then I carefully painted the window wood portion with this color and did the panes with cottage color Anvil, which is a black. I had to be really careful. It wasn't easy to get these panes out, so I was painting super carefully, and then I picked it up by the chain, and look what happened, guys. The whole thing came apart. But it really did make it a little bit easier to do my painting and stuff. I just took all of these out. I actually turned the panes over and repainted them black so that both sides would be painted. There was a part of me that wanted to scrap it and start over, but I was like, I've already have a vision and have enough work into this. Let's go ahead and get the ephemeral type stamp out. Right here, I'm seasoning them with 220 grit sandpaper. You just have to do this before the first use. And I'm using that same paint and the IOD brayer here to get the paint on here evenly. And then I was just going to kind of frame each of the panes how I liked to go with the floral for that pane. Next, I just used the transfer tool that comes with each pack and put the transfer on, rubbed it in with my hand first, and then carefully went over it with the transfer tool, making sure it's rubbed all the way in. I kind of roll up the paper, and if it doesn't come up, you can just put the paper back down and re-burnish it, and it is such a fun way to add interesting stuff to your home decor without having to paint it yourself, quite honestly. Next, I'm assessing the damage. I couldn't quite get this back together in an easy way as long as the little backings were on here, so I just popped them off. These were little like wooden covers, and I thought, you know what, I would rather this be a square piece that I get to glue back together. I'm using Type Bond wood glue and just gluing everything back together, and then I will figure out how to insert the panes later. I did use air dry clay to kind of fill in the gaps, and then I painted over the top of them. And then I sealed this whole coral color with liquid patina. When I first envisioned this piece, I thought it would be nice if the frame had this coral color. And as I'm sealing this and sealing the transfers, I'm wondering if this is too much. For me specifically. You guys could totally have left it here. My oldest said, Mom, you need to do stuff that's outside of your comfort zone. And I was like, not this week, I don't. This week I want to do stuff that I would like put in my own home. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going over this mixture with skeleton key, which reads like this blue gray. And since the coral color has been sealed, I can now wet distress the skeleton key so that that coral comes back through, but it is not like taking over this whole thing. And then I seal this with liquid patina, and now it's time to get the backers in. I am just putting the little nails over it, but that is not enough to hold these panes in. I add some Type Bond Quick and Thick to the corners and around the supports here, and I make sure that it does not seep through to the other side. And I let this dry completely overnight, but before I let it dry, I found this new tape that my friend Kristen over at Simply Joy Creations by Kristen showed me as a way to kind of close up your artwork in the back, and I had some problem with it getting out the right way, but we figured it out. And I just protected the back of this with this tape, and it feels complete. What do you guys think of this problem child? Were you glad I stuck with it? I think it's really beautiful, and the black showcases the colors of these transfers. Okay, that first one was a complicated project. Let's do something super simple. I had set my little create space or my studio in the basement up with these gorgeous glass jars that I had thrifted. And do you know what? Just totally elevated them to a whole new level. I've had this in my space for a little while, and every time I look up there, it just makes me smile, guys. Just adding this golden transfer. Now you use this just like a regular transfer, and you'll see those darker areas. That is where the gold is. And I've learned that as you're doing it, you will see as you're pulling up, those spaces will become clear when the gold has left. So that's what I was kind of looking for as I was learning, is I was burnishing the gold in and then making sure that that space on that top plastic was clear, and that meant that it was on the piece. And if it wasn't on the piece, I just put it back down and rubbed it in. Now, apparently you can change the sheen of this. If you're using it, you can dull it down a little bit with maybe like a clear wax if you want to, but because this is over glass and it's for decor, I did not seal it in, and I just love the way it looks right off of the page. But you can seal it in if you're using it on other projects, and you can dull it down if you don't like the shininess of it. But I just love how gorgeous this gold is when it reflects the light, and I feel like my studio space is so much more rich looking now that I have this in there. Next, let's use these gorgeous new bow molds. I had this picture. I went through a phase where I thrifted a lot of pictures, and this one was a really cheap picture, and I thought it would look better upcycled. So I grabbed the new bow mold and some air dry clay and some cornstarch and casted one of each of these sizes of bows and upcycled 2 pictures. Look how gorgeous this is when it comes out. I used Type On Quick and Thick to get it to stick to this porcelain. Let it dry overnight. There was a little bit of slipping. I should have used some painter's tape to get the tails to stay exactly where I wanted them. They kind of shifted because this is a rounded surface. And what I did the next day is just filled in the gaps with some more clay, and think that that was a really easy solve. I used a layer of DIY Salvation Solution, which is kind of like a primer because this was such a shiny surface. I used the white version and just kind of covered this particular pot before painting with my color of choice. Now in the second one, I did not do this, and the outcome seems similar. I am kind of doing an experiment to see what the wear is like. If you want to guarantee the best wear, I would suggest using Salvation Solution, but the DIY clay-based paint can go over most surfaces super easily, especially when it cures. It is on there, I don't know, like solid clay. So here's my second pot where I'm doing the smaller bow. This one was from Pier 1. I love the shape of it and thought, I'm not ruining its value. Let's just make this a little bit more special. This is the picture that was covered with Salvation solution. After that dried, I went over it and just stippling on, this is that gorgeous color, Skeleton Key, and I'm using the Little Dipper DIY paintbrush here and just kind of stippling it on and making sure I'm getting all the nooks and crannies, holding it upside down, right side up, making sure nothing is sticking through. I did go over this whole thing with 2 solid coats, and I just really loved how it turned out. You can see here it kind of slid after drying, so I just cast another tail and cut off little segments and put it right in there, and you really couldn't tell. I should have done painter's tape. Was not thinking, trying to do too many things at once this summer. Anyone else know what that's like? I'm using another one of my neutral favorites, Faded Burlap on this one. You can see I'm going directly over the pattern with the paint, and I probably did 2.5 coats just to make sure some of that blue stripe doesn't come through. But this paint is so heavily pigmented that I didn't need to necessarily do a primer, and it still worked out great. I sealed the Skeleton Key with liquid patina, and then I sealed the Faded Burlap with Big Top just to see how much of a sheen difference I could tell. I used Antique Gold Rub and Buff, which is one of my go-tos. I'm gonna link anything I use from my Amazon store down below so that you can find it. I just hit some of the high spots with it, and I thought it just really elevated this picture so well. For the Skeleton Key one, I used the Golden Rule Gold Wax from DIY Paint and did the same technique, and then inserted these gorgeous flowers that I found this season at Hobby Lobby. Make sure you go when they're 40% off, but these gorgeous flowers really take these to the next level. My friend is getting rid of her kids' toddler items and asked if I wanted to upcycle this chair. It is an old metal chair with wood, and some of the wood is kind of chipping, and I wanted to lean into that. This paint job did have some bumps, so I went over it with my orbital sander, and then I went over all of the lettering with Salvation solution just so I could kind of protect myself from seeing the letters. Next, I went over the whole thing with 2 coats of Skeleton Key, and I didn't repair this chair, so I was leaning into this rustic kind of feel. And after 2 coats of Skeleton Key, I wet distressed it so that some of this white could come back through. After the paint had dried a full 24 hours, I found the Fairytale Florals transfer and kind of planned out where I wanted each of these to go. I cut it first so that I could space it, and I love the grid line so that you can make sure it's kind of even on both sides. After making sure that all the transfer has adhered, I turn this little plastic backing over and burnish it into the project. You will see I try a couple of different options in the center of the back until I come up with one that I love. After that is finished, I seal the entire thing with liquid patina, and I would say that this is a great chair upcycle. For my fifth and final project this week, I'm gonna make over 3 of these silver plated, I guess these are juice pitchers that I had thrifted. I made over a teapot on a live with Sonnet a while back with a paint inlay, and I love how it turned out. So I thought I would try the paint inlay from this particular release. So the first thing I'm going to do is do 2 coats of white Swan on 2 of these, and I'm going to leave some of the spaces on some of them that silver color, and then I'm going to do 2 coats of faded burlap on another. Before I get the paint inlay out, I am going to wet distress these teapots. I don't like to do stuff that are too precious. So I am just doing some natural wear. The nature of a paint inlay is you're not going to get perfection. So I didn't want the paint job to be perfection either. So I'm going over this whole thing, wet distressing it before I do another layer of paint over where I'm going to place the paint inlay. You can see that this little cheap pack of paintbrushes I got off of Amazon, the handle popped off, and I just worked with it on this particular project. I didn't mind it so much, and then just glued it back on after I got it cleaned. So I am going over the section I'm going to do the paint inlay on, have wet paint, put the paint inlay paint side down into the paint, then I'm going to mist it with water. Make sure that none of the water is dripping. Kind of rub it in so that paint embeds, so the inlay embeds within the paint that you have on the project, and then let that dry completely. After you can tell that the coloring on the paper has changed, I spray it with the water mister and then pull it off. Now I'm going to do a more distinct piece in the center, and I'm really liking how this off black color looks with faded burlap. Such fun neutrals. The great part about these little pictures is you can do cut flowers. Because I haven't painted the inside of this, you can put water in this picture and have cut flowers from a yard, dried flowers, flowers from Hobby Lobby. This is a rounded surface, so I'm trying to get as many of these little wrinkles out as I can, just kind of rubbing that paint inlay into the paint. One of the hardest parts was trying to decide which beauty got to be on which picture, but the good thing about paint inlays is you have, I think they say up to 3 uses for each paint inlay. I am going to show you with this next one. I put this on, and because I had my little stand overhead, I didn't quite get it in the center. So you will see that I take it off, realize it's not totally in the center like I would like it, and just say, you know what, it's just paint. Let's paint over it and have a second use. So this one right here is going to be the stronger transfer because it's going to be a first use transfer. I got this one centered correctly, apparently. The next one, you will see that I realize it is off center, and just decide to paint over it so I can show you that the second time you use these, they work. They're just a little bit more distressed, but you can get more than one use out of each of these gorgeous designs, and I totally love how these turned out. Now I went on the back porch on a rainy day with the last little bits of a clear Rust-Oleum to go over the paint inlay so that I would not do any smearing when I use liquid patina. There are some folks that don't mind going over it with just a light hand. I prefer to just spray it so I know I'm not going to mess it up at the very end. What do you guys think of these pictures? So I am so excited to hear which new product is your favorite and which project in today's video is your favorite. Let me know in the comments below. If you are new here because you found me on the IOD summer playlist, thank you so much for checking me out. If you guys are not subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell at all so you get updated every time I upload a new video. Guys, I hope that you have fun shopping this release. Don't forget, I have everything over on my website at createyourowncozy.com. And don't forget to play with this release and feed your creative soul. I just dropped off my husband Brett and my middle kid Hadley, who is a scout. They are currently on a trip of a lifetime together. They are up in Alaska. Camping, not my favorite. I don't need to sleep on the ground, but they are camping in Alaska and having the time of their life. I am so excited for them. I am already missing them just a little bit, but I know that they are going to come back with so many fun memories, and I'm so glad that they get to do it together. Guys, I am so thankful that you are here. Let me know in the comments below what your favorites are, and I hope to see you in next week's video. Bye.